What's going on, everybody? This is the Roaming Prepper channel. Thank you for joining me today. Before I go any further, the dogs are loose. They're all over the house. They're tearing crap up. So you will likely hear barking, that weaky toy that annoys people, squeaking, and every now and then a dog brawl somewhere on the other side of the house. So just a heads up. Anyway, title of the video, where did it go? Well, where did what go? The UFOs. All right, we shot down the big old balloon. Everyone videotaped it. Oh, the balloon. And then we shot two other things down, and they're like, oh, we don't know where they went. I have a theory about that, and I'm actually applying some aerospace engineering principles to why I believe they can't find the damn things. I'll be right back, and let's talk about what I'm thinking. Folks, welcome back, everybody, and I appreciate you guys' support. For the record, I had put Nightbot on the chats. I wound up removing Nightbot because he was being very intrusive, and it kicked another mod off, so I've had to go back and manually verify where the mods were. So yeah, that little guy was being an asshole until I figure out how he works. All I saw was that it was just collecting a boatload of data on all of us, and I didn't like that, so Nightbot took a walk. I may find another chat bot to do the little, hey, subscribe to Instagram, blah, 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 but not right now. Anyway, going back to the UFO, what the hell's happening, right? What is going on with the UFOs? So first of all, let's recap, right? So we had this spy balloon, everyone accused of being a spy balloon, which probably was, went through the US. I did a live stream where I actually mapped out, or tried to map out, the path of the UFOs and all the derailments, but it went right over a bunch of bases. Like, it was making turns. It wasn't like, oh, going with the jet stream. No, because the jet stream does not move like that balloon did. I call bullshit. Anyway, shot down the balloon, then we collected the pieces. Then allegedly there were two other things out there that the Canadian and US Air Force, basically NORAD, went after. They chased it, and now they can't find it, and people are like, conspiracy, but actually I think they screwed up. But they're saying, well, we can't find it, and actually I think they made a mistake as far as what they did to deal with those unidentified objects. But first, let me give you guys some aerospace engineering 101. So this is one of my replica planes. It's actually a Hershey. It's actually a piggy bank, which is pretty freaking cool. As you can see, it's all dusty because it's ancient. And no matter how much I try and dust it, it gets dusty again because I live in Texas. And that's apparently just what happens in this part of the world. In any case, dealing with an aircraft, you have four primary forces on the body of the aircraft, right? You have thrust, that is the movement forward. This one would be provided by a propeller. If it's a jet, it would be a jet out the back or out of the wings. So you have thrust. Opposite thrust, you have drag. That's the frictional effect of air hitting the airplane and going over all the bumps and the irregularities, because it's not friction free. So you have thrust, you have drag, you have lift, which is provided by the wings as air flows over it, and of course you have the ever-present gravity, right? So, four forces on any aircraft: lift, gravity, thrust, drag. Okay, we're gonna start with that. So in any case, if you're shooting something else down, a lot of people watch, Top Gun or whatever movie, and they're like, oh, you blew the plane to pieces. Absolutely. If you blow an aircraft to pieces, it will no longer be an aircraft, and it will plummet to the earth, right? We already know that. In air combat, there are multiple ways. Obviously, you obliterate the airplane. Two, you kill the pilot, or you destroy the control. If it's a drone, you control its control CPU, and down it goes because it's no longer being controlled. Ultimately, gravity takes over. Lastly, you make it, and the most basic one is you make it non-aerodynamic. You make it a non-viable aircraft. At the end of the day, missiles, guns, killing the pilot, blowing it to pieces, whatever you do, has to do with making the aircraft, whatever it is, a balloon, a drone, a plane, a helicopter, you make the craft such that it is no longer capable of flight. Now that's a lot easier to do than obliterating the airplane like you see in the movies. So in a case like this, You mess up the wings, which also, by the way, for many planes house the gas tanks. That will reduce lift, cause the plane gravity to take over. Obviously, if you damage thrust, it will take gravity will take over and bring the plane down. So what they did with the balloon, they fired apparently sidewinders at all these targets. Now the sidewinder is a heat seeker. So the balloon, I could see it may have a heating element and some other devices in it that were reflecting the sunlight and creating their own heat. So I see where the sidewinder made sense. Now, a lot of people think the sidewinder went and blows up the balloon. So if they aimed at the balloon itself, not the payload, but the balloon, they fire the rocket. The rocket, you notice how the balloon kind of burst and then came down. Well, the way these sidewinders and Phoenix and now the new AIM-120s work, they don't necessarily have to hit the plane directly to destroy it. Many of them would come as close as they can and detonate. The Malaysian Airlines plane that was shot down over Ukraine by the Russian separatists, or so they claim, actually was not blown to pieces in the air. The S-200 missile, so if this was the Malaysian airplane, the S-200 missile actually detonated about 20 to 50 yards away. But when it detonated, it sprays a bunch of pellets at the direction of the target. Those pellets hit the front of the plane and killed the crew and basically tore up the wings so that the plane was no longer viable and the crew was dead, so to the ground it went. There were actually, they suspect, people still alive in the back of that plane as it went down, which is pretty awful. But yeah, all you need to do is make the plane no longer capable, or the aircraft no longer capable of flight. So they had the balloon, right? And I need a balloon. We use this janky orange that we probably should have thrown out. You have the balloon, you have the sidewinder. Sidewinder goes, boom, it detonates nearby, perforates the balloon. That's why the balloon did that weird whoo as it went down. They didn't go and blow the balloon up directly. They kind of perforated it and it just fell apart. And I think the goal there was we blow the balloon up, we keep the payload in one piece as it comes down, right? We can't help that. Gravity, once the aircraft is no longer viable, gravity is the boss, right? It takes over. But if we keep the payload underneath, this is the payload, we blow the balloon up, the payload underneath falls to the ground, hopefully at least in one area where it will probably break up when it hits the ground, or the water in this case. And then they can go there and collect it. That was easy. Also keep in mind that balloon was 200 feet wide. That's a lot of balloon, right? An average story in a building is anywhere from 8 to 10 feet. So think about it, 200 feet, wide circle, it's roughly a 20-story building floating around the air. That's a big thing. Some people estimated that the Statue of Liberty could have fit inside the balloon. So that's a big target area, right? You perforate the balloon up there, more than likely you're not going to destroy the payload because it's hundreds of feet away. Now we go to the UFOs. So we have, you have that UFO out there, right? So whatever it was, the octagon with the strings, they described it differently. It's going do-do-do-do-do. It was so small that the first pass of the F-22s and then the Canadian F-16s, they kind of went whoosh trying to take pictures of it. And they really couldn't get a good look at it because it was just this little thing. So what did they do? They fired a sidewinder at that thing. Well, now let's compare. So you have your sidewinder, right? You have your missile, goes to your balloon. The balloon is 200 feet, so it's a big old balloon. It's a little rocket, pops a hole in it, down it goes. Now you take the small, UFO thing, you fire that same rocket at it. The UFO was the size of a small car. So what are we talking about? 15 feet? Let's say a pickup truck, 15, 20 feet, the bigger SUVs. That's a hell of a lot smaller than a 20-story big balloon. Park an SUV next to a 20-story building. You can see how big a difference it is. And they didn't fire at a balloon with the UFO below it. They hit the payload directly. So here's this sidewinder, comes hauling ass at this widget, whatever it was, and bam, it either hits it directly or it perforates it with a bunch of pellets. Regardless of what model of rocket they hit it with, they blew it to pieces, guys, at 40,000 feet. So think about this for a second. Even though the balloon was higher, They collapsed the balloon, but the payload was still, for the most part, intact as it fell. They were able to watch it come down, and then I'm sure it fell apart a little bit, but it kind of fell in this one area in the water, and they were waiting for it. The Coast Guard and the Navy were like, all right, here it comes. You know, wait, all right, it hit the ground, let's go get it, you know, and they were ready. We shot these other things in the tundra in the winter, and we hit the payload directly with a Sidewinder. My personal opinion, if a Sidewinder hits a small target directly, it will obliterate the damn target. If you look at a Javelin, which is a little bit smaller than a Sidewinder, you've seen Javelins hit tanks and blow the turret off these Russian tanks, or it hits an armored car and just blows. And these are armored vehicles. They're reinforced to resist being hit by this. We don't know what the hell the flying widget was, but if you hit it with a Sidewinder, you probably destroyed the shit out of it. So that's why they can't find the pieces, because they blew them up. The pieces didn't fall as one piece and then hit the ground and break. No, we blew them to pieces at 40,000 feet, and the pieces went everywhere. So think about it, 40 to 60,000 feet is where you're supposed to detonate an EMP to knock out an area's grid. It was that altitude. But we took something about 15, 20 feet long and popped it with a Sidewinder, blew it to pieces way up there, and then, you know, the pieces just went everywhere. For all we know, quite honestly, and we've seen some aircraft. Remember during 9/11, the plane in Pennsylvania, when it hit the ground, right? And that can't hit the ground in one piece. Now, people argue, was it the pilots? Was it the terrorists? Was it shot down? Irrelevant. Talking about just the science of the aircraft, it came down for the most part in one piece. And even that one piece hit blew the pieces all the way across that big farm field. So imagine if we blew something up at 20 miles in the air. The pieces are everywhere. That pieces of those two UFOs are probably all over God's green earth. They're probably all over the Great Lakes. Good luck finding it. So folks, I don't think this one's a conspiracy. I actually think it was overkill. They probably should have put guns on it first and see if they could take it down with some 20mm shells. You hit it with an air-to-air missile, and it's a small target to begin with, you obliterated it, and it just went all over the place. So I'm not expecting them to ever find anything, and if they do, they may not necessarily tell us, so there's all that whole part of the argument. Yeah, I don't think this one's a conspiracy, folks. I think they just basically blew the shit out of the target at, 15, 20 miles in the air, and the pieces just went all over God's green earth. In the snow, in the winter, in Canada and Michigan. Well, of course we're not going to find it. So yeah, I don't think this one's a conspiracy. I think this one was a case of overkill. They probably should have put guns on it or found another way to take it down, or maybe send a drone, like a Reaper to follow it, because a Reaper can fly very slow, has very long wings, and has a very wide aspect ratio, much like a plane like this. The aspect ratio is the area of the wings, a measurement of the area of the wings that provide lift. So the higher the aspect ratio, the slower an aircraft can go and stay aloft, right? If it goes too slow, it hits stall speed and down to the ground it goes. So they probably should have sent a Reaper. It wasn't moving that fast. Send a Reaper to make circles around it with that high-res camera array it has and take a bunch of pictures and try and figure out what it is. They may have done that anyway, but from what we're seeing in the media, it sounds like they just went and shot the damn thing down, and it's in pieces all over Canada. So, folks, not a conspiracy. I think they fucked up. I think they should have done something different to collect more info before they killed it. Now, was it approaching an area that was sensitive, or was it impeding something else? I know it was lower, which means it was in the line of air traffic. That may be the reason they said, look, let's just get this thing out of the air and we'll figure it out later. So that may be a valid rationale, but not a conspiracy. I think they just blew it to pieces, whatever the hell it was. Now, if they did find it, I'm super curious as to what the hell it was, that the pilots couldn't get a good look at it and they had to Sidewinder the crap out of it. So anyway, that's that's your 101 on aerodynamics and how to shoot a plane down, which is actually kind of terrible. In any case, that's the end of the video. Thank you for joining me. I hope you learned something about aerospace engineering and avionics, as well as air-to-air combat. All right, you guys be safe out there. God bless, Godspeed, and I will see you on the next one. You guys take care.